we're going. It's Saturday night, late night Saturday night. Here where I am. Cheers to you. But Glenn Pocknall, thanks for joining me. It's an early Sunday morning. It looks a sunny day in New Zealand. How you doing, man?
Good, mate. Yeah, I won't join you with your red wine, but I'll have a little cup of tea to toast you there. But no, going well. It's been challenging 3.5 weeks in lockdown, but the weather's been beautiful here in Wellington, like it normally is.
Of course.
No wind, so can't complain really.
I think the best place to start and the most obvious question is, what? You're a tea drinker? Get off.
What? Sorry?
You're a tea drinker.
A tea drinker, yeah.
No.
I used to be coffee. But,
yeah.
Hillary, my partner, has been giving me absolute grief for the last 3 weeks because I'm having about 20 cups of tea a day, according to her. It's just purely out of boredom more than anything.
Absolutely, yeah. But why are you not a coffee drinker? Every cricketer is a coffee drinker.
Oh, I definitely have coffee during the season when the games are going on, but it just gets me too fizzed, and I'll be crashing at 2 o'clock. Where if you're watching a game of cricket, it's fine, you can kind of keep engaged, but sitting on the couch, I'll just fall asleep.
Now, so Glenn, you're the head coach of the Wellington Firebirds. That's a team I still like to call my team because I was a part of that team. Like I like to, I don't call myself a black cap anymore, but that's part of my team. You're my team. I'm from Wellington, and you guys did something pretty cool this year. You won the Plunket Shield, which was a shortened season. How did the end of that season? We'll all double back on part of all that. How did the end of the season sort of finish, and how did that feel?
To be honest, I don't think it has ended. That's probably the feeling I've got. Yeah, as you say, we've won and we've got the trophy, and we've managed to have some photos with it, and do that type of thing. But it's a really strange feeling. It's been a goal of the association since 2003 when they last won it. So to win it is fantastic, but it hasn't really sunk in because we haven't had that, opportunity to end it. We have tried to end it in our own way, but you never can replace that feeling of walking off the field, taking the last wicket, scoring the last runs, being there in that changing room for those moments where the shield gets delivered or the shield gets presented. So, yeah, it's extremely proud of what we've achieved, but it certainly hasn't sunk in. And I don't know if it will until years to come.
Yeah, it does kind of feel, in terms of being a Wellingtonian, being a former Firebird, part of that squad, that system. The photos with clean whites with the trophy just looked with the shield, I should say, just looked really strange. There was this, it was fake, but it was earned, but there was still this staged sort of feeling to it. That must be hard, and like you said, it hasn't sunk in, but you did it.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line is, yes, we did it, we won it, and deserved winners, 20-odd points ahead, dominated the competition. So all those things are right, but I think it's something, in years to come, probably when the guys will stop playing and whenever the team that wins it next, maybe that will be the time where you go, yeah, that's right, that's what we did win that back then. But it's just bizarre. Like you look at 2020 and we lived and died by every single game in that campaign, and you get towards the end and you have a couple of hiccups, but you still qualify for the final. Then you win the final, and there's 4,500 at the basin cheering for you. Those moments you can't replace those moments.
Yeah. Now you've come to coaching the long way. I think that's sort of fair to say. It's not a playing career that got you your leads, your advances. How did you end up as the first class coach of Wellington, Pockers?
Oh, it's
not first
really
class. How did you end up as the coach? Sorry, apologies. I got that round the wrong way.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Plunket Shield. I actually have to pinch myself sometimes and just remember the role I've got, because it's easy to take things for granted, not just in cricket but in life. And I guess to answer your question, I'll give it the long way. The long story is,
hey mate, we got time. Cheers.
I grew up as a kid in Wellington, New Zealand, wanting to be an All Black and wanted to be a black cap, and I truly believe that's what I was going to do when I was a kid playing in the backyard with my mates every single night during the summer. And
who were you? Who were you when you were playing? Everyone, as a kid, we were always somebody. Who were you when you were playing as a kid?
Funny enough, as a bowler, I was Derek Pringle.
Oh, wow.
Don't ask me why, but I was him as a bowler in the backyard. And as a batter, I was Mark Greatbatch.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's funny, I'm not left-handed.
Yeah.
It's just
both
bizarre.
similarly built. They both got about the same build at the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So like going through those stages of, I guess, early adolescence, and then going through college years, it was the same. I played to a higher level at secondary school, and that was always my focus. I was never an academic. And then once I left school, I guess it was still the dream, to be an All Black, to be a black cap. And then it wasn't probably till 3 or 4 years after I'd left school that I'd realised it was actually not going to happen. One, I didn't have the work ethic, and yes, I said I wanted it and I did believe it, but it's one thing saying that, but it's another thing actually putting all the actions and the behaviours and the mindset into it.
So left school 16, sort of 17, and realised sort of at about 20 that maybe this isn't going to happen. These sort of sporting goals are not quite going to. I'm not going to reach.
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess a couple of triggers for me to that point were, one, once I left school, I'd been in various jobs. I didn't want to go to university because, as I said before, not an academic. Been various jobs, worked in a printing firm for 4 years. So those, I love that, I enjoyed that, but even though I'd given up on that dream of being a black cap and a All Black, I still love sports. So it was actually quite a hard time in my life, because you're actually realising, Jesus, I've put all this energy and effort into my life up until this point, and it's not going to happen. So where do I go? So that was a little turning point, and I had a pretty tough stage. I've just moved out of home, so all these things are kind of going on in my mind, and deeply in a bit of a deep dark hole, which you need to sometimes to get into that place to come out the other side. And then I don't know how this came about me, but I remembered my college coach who worked at Cricket Wellington, Mark Borthwick, who's a lot of people in Wellington and New Zealand will know. He was the coaching director, so I went into his office down at Westpac Stadium and poured my heart out to him, really, and just said, "Look, Mark, I've stuffed up. This is what I wanted to do. It's not going to happen." Not expecting to get anything out of the conversation, just needed to pour it out, really, and reach to somebody who I'd looked up to. And
how old did you know Beefy? So Mark Borthwick, Beefy, South African born, played or coached in New Zealand, coached a lot in Wellington, men's teams, women's teams, done plenty. How well did you know him at that stage?
I knew him well, not as well at that stage. Like 4 years prior, I knew him really well. He coached me in rugby and cricket for 4 years at secondary school, so I knew him. That was, I guess, the background to the relationship. So I finished off that conversation. He just listened and said, "Have you thought about coaching?" And I had into that stage, and I basically said, "No, I haven't." And then that was the starting point. That was 2001, 2002, and that's had to the long way to answer your question. That's how I got into coaching.
Wow. So 2001, 2002, that era. So actually, Wellington's just won their first Shell Trophy at that stage. First Shell Trophy for 26 years. You'll know the number, 24 years?
24.
24 years. So 2001, Wellington won their first Shell Trophy. So the Plunkett Shield, so the long form, the first class competition for 24 years. Was there an element of that where Mark Borthwick, do you think, has said, well, how about coaching? Because he's part of a system that was producing it was a pretty good Wellington team at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark coached a lot of those guys in age group cricket coming through as well. But so, yeah, I think it was. And that first year, that first probably 2 years, I didn't really know where it was going to lead to. I guess I loved it. I loved coaching, but I wasn't really sure if it was going to lead to where it has now. And it wasn't too 3 years into coaching, 14 and 15-year-olds, that I thought, okay, I'm actually going to give this a real crack. And at that stage, it was Mark and a few other people where I basically started to draw up a 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan was to be the Firebird coach in 2013. which didn't eventuate. It took me another 7 more years, but it was looking back on that journey now, it was a pretty important phase, I guess, to where I've got to.
You pushed pretty hard, and I don't know a whole lot about your backstory, if that makes sense, but I know enough. You pushed pretty hard. You did quite a few seasons overseas doing coaching. I guess you put yourself on the line for a lot of people to say no to you, especially given your playing career or playing background.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I've unsuccessfully gone for 6 first-class coaching roles.
Yeah.
The 7th time was the time now, which I'm in this role. So
when was your first application?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, you don't want to tell me?
And, no. And granted, like I knew at the time, for the majority of those times I wasn't ready, but it was more about going through that experience, actually sitting in front of a panel and getting grilled and learning, and then getting some feedback from the panel as to what they thought I needed to do to achieve that dream, which was great. And one of the pieces of advice was that it's like you haven't played to the high level, so you're just like every other coach. In that regard, you've got nothing to fall back on. And I said, well, how do I? That's tough feedback. Change that? Yeah, and
real tough feedback.
Oh, it is, but I needed it, if you know what I mean. So, it was some solutions where you've got to go and coach overseas. So, that was. It seems like a very easy thing to do, but at the time I was married. It's very easy to say, but you're giving up your life. I had to resign from my job at Cricket Wellington. My first stint was at Holland for 6 months, where you're just coaching club cricket, and a hell of an experience. Learned a lot about myself. Not a huge amount about cricket, but learned a lot about myself and dealing with a lot of the challenges that you face in coaching. And then I spent a season in the UK, and then I spent a season in Ireland. So, looking back, those things were invaluable.
What was the season you were at Hove? You spent with Sussex.
That was 2011 from memory. 2011 year. It was a year Scott Styris was the overseas pro, and he got that 100 century against someone off 30 balls or something ridiculous.
Yeah, small ground, and
tiny.
Beautiful ground, one of my favorite grounds, and thankfully I did get to play there. It's a cool little place. But how does someone that's played, with the utmost respect, no cricket, please, does that make, I can say that, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you played no cricket. How do you end up as a coach at Sussex at a one of the, it's a great county ground, and it's a great county club. How do you end up as a coach there? Yeah,
no, that dead right in answering that question. And I had some contacts within the club which helped. Scott Styris was a good help, so he helped. And it's what the world's like. It's, in some respects, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So that was my foot in the door. Don't get me wrong, I had to sacrifice a lot of things financially, because I wasn't going there getting paid huge amounts of money. I was almost going there to volunteer my time and see where things ended up. So they helped out with some accommodation next to the ground, and I did some one-on-ones with some academy players. And that was, I guess, a little bit of income I could get, but everything else was essentially on a voluntary basis. So I said, look, I'm here for 6 months. You use me how you want. This is what I want to get out of it. I want to learn from coaches. I want to learn from players. I want to see how your environment's shaped. I want to learn about your academy. I want to learn about how you scout opposition players. So
in a way, you kind of pushed yourself as an intern, or not as an unpaid, but you were pushing pretty hard to get the experience that was required at your expense, almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how you go about that situation, then that is probably what helps set you up for the future. So I left that experience, and then a month later, I actually got an offer, a full-time offer to work for the county as a coach, not the first team, but work at the county as a coach, which I did think about. But going back to the old 10-year plan that I'd drawn up, it was I wanted to be a first class coach in New Zealand first and foremost. So
Yeah.
From creating a good impression in that environment, people then start talking about you in a positive light, which is great. You go for a job here and you can put Keith Greenfield, who still is the director of cricket at Sussex, you put his name down and they ring him and they say, hey, what's this bloke like? And he says, good things about what you did, then that's worth its weight in gold.
It's still, given, how did you know Scott to then get the in at Sussex? That's still you're still putting a lot on the line from a ego perspective.
He is, or I am? Sorry.
You are. You.
Yeah.
You've got to approach Scott and say, can you put in a word in? I guess Scott then has to back you to then say, yeah, I'll put in a word in for you. So you're putting a lot of your ego on the line here, yeah?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But you have to, and I think you got to be prepared to be vulnerable to, to get that respect back in some ways, and it's pouring your heart out in some respects as to what your dreams are, because people want to hear that stuff. When you sit down, I can't remember how the conversation went, but you sit down with someone like Scott or someone like Mike Hesson, who I've leaned on quite a bit, and say, look, this is what I want to achieve. It may be pie in the sky, I may be completely thinking this is not going to happen, but what are your thoughts? Is there anything you can suggest that's going to help me along the line? So by showing a bit of vulnerability and opening up in that respect, then the majority of people want to help.
It's amazing what taking the mask away does for some people, giving that open chin. Here's me. I'm showing you me, and what people will then reply with. So interview process for Sussex, and okay, it wasn't a well-paying job, but that's still a bit of a gamble for them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they don't know me from a bar of soap. And yeah,
how well did you know Scott? What could have
not very well.
Yeah, so Scott didn't know you particularly well, so he couldn't have done a massive intro job for you, could he?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah,
you must have.
So they're taking a gamble as well.
Yeah,
they're taking a massive gamble.
So, because absolutely, Mike Hesson is the model that I sort of absolutely see you fulfilling, and then having success with Wellington. You kind of there's a real close connect in that regard. What have you got out of Hess? Because his time with New Zealand, given his playing background, was extraordinary. Your time with Wellington, given your playing background, is extraordinary. What did you get out of Hess that is Mike Hesson? What that has given you this pathway?
It's similar to some of those other things I just said. It's about going overseas and having a point of difference. So for a lot of people as a coach, their point of difference is they've played. They've played 100 first-class games. They've played for New Zealand. They've been an expert in a particular skill. So I didn't have any of that. So I had to figure out what my point of difference was going to be as a coach. And initially it was around analysis and around scouting and around providing a different perspective to the game of cricket. And back then, when I went to Sussex in 2010, it wasn't very prevalent in New Zealand at domestic level. But basically more of a resource thing. The resource just wasn't there, whereas Sussex actually had 3 full-time analysts, whereas New Zealand, and it's still the same now, domestic level, there's no full-time analysts. So I got a huge amount of information, from that, and that was from conversations with Mike about, okay, point of difference can be this. So getting a really good understanding of that, and then bringing that back to the domestic environment here is almost a foot in the door as well here. It's like, yes, I haven't played at this level, so I'm not going to be able to teach Ian O'Brien how to bowl an in-swinger, but I may be able to teach him a little about what his numbers look. Why is this guy not getting many wickets in the second innings, but in the first innings he's getting heaps? Is it fatigue? Is it he's just not bowling in the second innings? The captain's not giving him the ball. What is it? Looking a little bit deeper into the game.
So you've sort of peeled off the ego and gone, right, I'm not going to, skills. Yeah, let's take your skills and let's apply them in a slightly statistical way, and that's been
Yeah.
your point of difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it took a while to get there because when I first got into coaching, a lot of the coach ed is around fault analysis, which is, looking back now, it's a totally wrong way to approach it. It's you're looking at a player and you're telling them everything they're doing wrong, and then you're opening up a textbook and saying, actually, you've got a bowl like this or you've got a bat like this. So, that was the scary thought about how coach ed used to be run. Now it's a little bit more holistic and it's more about the player and understanding them and the technique and the I guess the cricket skill was a little bit secondary. So it's changed for the better.
Yeah, it's a massive change, and I couldn't agree more. It has changed for the better, given that the skills coach has a place, but actually let's apply those skills is probably has a bigger place, I think, now as we're going more baseball, statistically orientated matchups.
Yeah, that's huge, and we use that to a really positive effect in the 2020. Even though we didn't have analysts, we've got some really good volunteers and a guy called Greg Butler, who I'm not sure
I
you know of. He was
Butts,
tied up with Tony. Yeah, he does a hell of a lot of work for us behind the scenes, getting some of those analytics. So when player C comes out to bat, we know that we're going to bowl this guy against him because the numbers say that he struggles in that particular area, and that's been huge for us. Definitely huge for our success in the shorter form.
So even at domestic level now, you've taken the Wellington team, the Wellington Firebirds, into a more matchup orientated game format.
Yeah, in the shorter forms we have, it's not something we talk to the whole team about. It's certainly something that we talk to the captain about. Michael Bracewell, who's the captain here, he gets a lot of that information, and one of the other senior players, Devon Conway, gets it as well, just so we're trying to cover both bases out on the field, and then we just look at it. It's not a huge amount of information because some of it you can get a little bit lost in translation, but something comes out and it's like, okay, well, this guy really struggles against this type of bowler. Well, we've got that type of bowler.
Yep.
So when this guy comes out to bat, he's going to get on. So we try and keep it really simple because you don't want 11, 12 players sitting in a team meeting talking for hours and hours about this guy and that guy and this guy and this guy. So we try and keep it quite high level, and just the people who need to know that information get that information.
Okay, so I didn't play a lot of one-day cricket for Wellington. I didn't play any one-day cricket for quite a long time in my career. I played red ball stuff and played very little white ball until sort of the second half, maybe, of my Wellington career. And even when I was playing red ball stuff, white ball stuff, sorry, I wasn't going particularly good. We had Graham Napier come over and overseas for a couple of years, and he was going good. He played a few first-class games, but he played quite a lot of our Wellington white ball games. And I was like, what's he doing in white ball that I'm not doing in white ball? So I got the stats out. I got the pitch maps out with the analytics system, and I started studying his pitch map, basically. And all of a sudden, it became so obvious what I wasn't doing and what he was doing. And all of a sudden, I started playing a lot more one-day cricket, ended up playing a few internationals and played a few T20 internationals. And there was an element that I don't think we were exploring it particularly well back then, and we had all the information. Is it easier to coach through stats, through that sort of statistical analysis now?
Yeah, it is, because it's evidence, really. And otherwise, it's just my opinion. I can have a conversation with you as a player and say, Ian, I think you need to do X, Y, and Z, and you might nod your head, but deep down you're saying, no, that's bullshit. I don't need to do that. Whereas I show you something and say, 70% of your runs are get hit here. Yeah. Then you can't argue with it. Well, you can, but it's 99% true. So if you want to argue with it, then you're essentially the one that's going to not benefit from that information.
Do you think there is it'll never be complete, but do you think there is a real big switch going from a skilled player to skilled player that moves into coaching, or a player that grounded out and gets into coaching, there's a big switch across to there is a lot more freedom now for someone like yourself that looks at the game from the outside looking in and goes, why aren't we doing this? Because the stats say so. That has switched quite a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And the other thing with stats as well, it's one thing knowing that information and look at that information, but then it's actually being able to put those skills into interaction. Because you can break down a game, and we've done it in the past in formats and set targets and say, if we do this, we'll win 80%. If we do this, we'll win 70%. And that stuff's all true, but then it's about how you do that. How do you go about getting 3 singles and over in one-day cricket, or how do you go about getting 10 boundaries in the last 10 overs? You know, it's easy to say, but you've got to have the skill set to do that. And I guess that's where your training comes in. And you know, we've already done it in terms of looking at last season, looking at where guys can get a little bit of an edge. So for bowlers, for instance, you know, this is what I'll be doing anyways. I'm an opposition player. I'm looking at all the bowlers this last season and what they do, what their grips are for their slow balls. Do they bowl wild hole? Do they bowl slow ball bounce? I've been looking at all that information. So then come next season, there's no surprises. I know what every single bowler's doing. So our bowlers, you know, they've got to be a bit more smarter than that, and they've actually got to come out next season and they've actually got to bowl slightly different, which it may sound a little bit strange because they've done so well with what they've done, but you've got to stay one step ahead of the game, one step ahead of the opposition, because the information's there.
Okay, so given what you've just said there, you're now coaching a bowler or advising a bowler, probably giving information that they've got your footage. You now have to do something different. You now have to, your tells, your cues, or you know what you give away has to change now if you're gonna, or you have to bowl a different ball. You're sort of going into that sort of masking, phantoming, giving away different tells, poker face / giveaways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they're not big. They're not always big changes.
Yeah.
But you talked about cues. Those cues are massive. You know, for batters anyway. The cues are big. So if you can make the cue slightly different, it's going to create doubt in the batsman's mind. So I guess one example I can think of is a bowler landing in the particular same spot in terms of the crease. You might be going that far wider or that far straighter for one ball. For one ball in the over, and that's creating a little bit more of an angle, but also the cue that the batsman sees and go, oh, I haven't seen this before. So they're not huge changes. They're just really little subtle changes. Some of those changes we can do during the season. It depends a little bit on the player, whether they're comfortable doing that. But you just got to stay one step ahead. You know, all our batters we're looking at, you know, the hardest one is probably leg spinners, picking wrong-uns. So we study that. We look at it. We look at the leggies and Michael Rippon from Otago. What is it when he's bowling his wrong-un? What's different? Is there any cues? Looking at it really closely.
So you're taking this down to frame by frame for a lot of batsmen in that regard to read the cues. You're taking them through a front-on camera, frame by frame. Sort of look for this. There is this.
Yeah, and that's the only angle we've got is front on. In the back. So not every player needs it. Some players can go, I can pick it. It's fine. That's great. We'll leave you. You don't need to come to this meeting because you're fine. But another player goes, look, I'm really struggling. I've got no idea what he's bowling. He needs a little bit more attention then.
We so similarly, tour to Sri Lanka. 2008, I think it was, 2 tests. We're at Gaul. We took Saqlain Mushtaq with us as a spin bowling coach, and so they had Murali, of course, tough, can't read him anyway, doesn't matter. Dark ball, dark hand, you can't see the change of grips. It was just too hard. But Mendez was going to play the Ajenta Mendez, who had the 3 different. He had a offie, a googly, and a carom ball. So we had enough scouting that said, Karen Ball, you could see his little finger go up, the area would pop up. We knew that if he held it here in front of his face, it was the offie. And if he didn't do that, it was going to be the googly, which spun the same way as the offie. So all of a sudden, just by picking up his tells, his little cues, we had negated him. We didn't take him for many runs, but he didn't get any wickets and didn't play the next test match because we gave him nothing. You've now pushed your batsmen into a place where they just have more confidence and while more confidence, more time out in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to that preparation, which I'm not sure, from that story, it sounds like it's pretty detailed back in your day, but it has to be quite detailed. So the player, whether it's a batter or a bowler or a fielder just goes in with no surprises. Mm-hmm. When they see something, it's okay, I've seen this, that's fine, I've dealt with it, I've been over it in my own mind.
Yeah.
I've got a plan for it. I know what to do. And that's challenging, especially for younger, inexperienced players, which, you can have all those conversations and you can go through all that detail and it's great, but it doesn't actually work for every player because it can blow the mind up too. It can have a negative effect.
And then how do you inject that into the naturally gifted player? Because they maybe don't want that, but the grafter, the grinder, the grit, they maybe do need that. How do you work out who needs it and who doesn't? Or is that an opt-in or is that an opt-out? How do you do that as a head coach?
Well, it's about understanding what your players need. And again, that's a challenge as well. It's understanding what does he need? So to understand that, you really need to understand them as a person. To understand them as a person, you need to spend time with them, get to know them. And you need to have quite deep conversations with them because you need to find out how they tick, what works for them. So you've got to build that relationship first so you can get to a point where okay, this guy, I can only tell him one thing today. Before we've got a game tomorrow, I can only tell him one thing.
Yeah.
So I know if I tell him 3 or 4 things, he's not going to be able to think in the middle, or his brain's going to be overloaded. Whereas this guy, I can actually tell this guy 100 things. It's not going to affect him in any way because he can absorb it, and he can just go out and implement it because he's that good. He's that good at absorbing information. So it's a long process to get that. You've got to build that foundation of understanding them.
That leads me to the question that I've sort of trying to slow play getting to this question, because this is the question that I think a lot of players post career, they start thinking, how do I coach a team? I think it's easy being an assistant coach or a skills coach. I think that's quite can be a simple role. It's a tough job, but it's still as simple. Your boundaries are outlined. But when did you get the feeling that you could coach a team as opposed to being an assistant coach that ran all the warm-ups and ran the drills? When did you go from being an assister to the top?
Oh, it's a good question too. It's probably in all reality and honesty, it was probably only a couple of years ago. I spent 6-7 years as an assistant, and when my ego was talking and when I was thinking back then, I thought I could do the job then. It's only the benefit of hindsight and experience that I can look back and go, no, I actually couldn't, because I would have really struggled. Because the main challenges aren't cricket. The main challenges of being a head coach are got nothing to do with cricket. Nothing to do with the game of cricket.
Yeah.
It's not about bowling or batting or fielding. It's everything else. So
you've got me leaning in. You've got me leaning in. I'm engaged.
So it's about, how do you get better at those other things? And the only way I got better was just time. I spent a lot of time with Jamie Siddons, who assisted for 3 years. Spent a lot of time with Bruce Edgar, who I assisted for 3 years as well. And those two guys are a huge amount to, because I learned so much off them. And they're both very different in the way they go about things, and they've certainly got different skill sets. But certainly learned from going through that experience with both of them that it's not about the cricket. That stuff will generally take care of itself. How do you mould 11 guys to go out to fight for each other? You've got an off-field issue. How do you deal with that? Do you just sweep it under the carpet, or do you address it as a team, or as individuals, all those challenges.
So you wanted to coach a team, be a head coach, and now you look back. You wanted to be a head coach before you should have been a head coach, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
When what this is the thing is that so I've always finished playing, did a bit of media, love to do coaching, but hate to take a team. I have no idea how to be a head coach given given my skill set. What gave you that confidence? Maybe now you see it as a slightly misplaced confidence. What gave you that confidence that you could take a team? What skills did you have or think you have that thought you could coach, you could run a whole team?
Yeah, again, it was a bit of a slow burner.
Yeah.
I look back to, I think it was my second year of being assistant coach. Jamie was having his third kid. So he was away for 10 days.
Yeah.
He wasn't having, sorry, his wife was having the kid.
Yeah, well.
So he was away for 10 days. So he basically just said, here you go. Mm-hmm. I was kind of, what do you mean? He goes, you're in charge.
Cool.
And at the time you kind of think, shit, what's this guy doing? He's throwing me under the bus here. But looking back, it was brilliant actually what he did, because I had to think. I couldn't just go off a whiteboard or go off what the coach is saying, or I had to actually think and
tie a noose or tie a ladder.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we had one 4-day and one day during that time. So that was I guess the initial. It was like, okay, I can do this. You know, we had a game. I spoke to the captain. I told a guy who was going to be 12th man. We travelled. We actually got to the place safely. Mm-hmm. No one was late.
Yeah.
We had a talk at the end of the game. It was civil. Guys were honest. So that was probably a first marker. And then I think the next year something similar. It wasn't another kid, but Jamie was away again, so there's a little bit more detail there. And then over time, I got given a little bit more responsibility. Bruce, a couple of years ago, gave me a couple of weeks in pre-season. He said, I want you to plan this whole 2 weeks out. This is a rough idea of what I'm looking at, but you've got to plan it all, then give it to me and we'll have a talk about it. So some really good opportunities for mentorships from those two guys. And then I guess last year was probably the final piece of the puzzle where Bruce said, you're running the one-day campaign. And again, it was at the time you kind of like, you know, it's something I've always dreamed of, but you're like, oh shit, okay. Where do I start? Yeah. So it's just going through that step by step. Whereas going back to some of the earlier questions you said, I think if I jumped in and did all of that to start, like the whole thing, I would have got a big shock. Like the biggest shock, from not a shock, but the biggest surprise probably that I had this past season was the biggest workload was the pre-season. So we had 7 weeks of pre-season. And I thought that's easy. We'll just have a few nets here and there. We have the odd chat. Things are going to run pretty smoothly.
That's the worst part of the season, champ. All the rest of it runs sweet.
Oh, I know that now. Yeah. So like the level of planning and the detail of planning we went through was massive, because effectively every day we're planning for 20 people. You know, it's probably more actually. You got 20 players and you got 5 or 6 staff. So it's planning for 25 people every single day, and that needs to be done properly, and that needs to be done well. If you want, one, if you want happy players, but 2, if you want at least some sustainable success at some stage through the season.
Oh, that's the same for a player. Every player counts the pre-seasons. When you finish the season, you win something. Happy days, cool. That was all worth it. At the end of the season, the last couple of games, the last couple of warm-ups, we've got 10 warm-ups left. We've got 9 warm-ups left. We're counting down the days to the end of the season. The pre-season, those days that's a lot of planning in terms of time management, keeping it interesting. What are the keep it interesting things that you were doing with the Wellington team this year?
Just keeping it fresh is a challenge.
What is it?
It's Groundhog Day. Like for us, we connected a lot with our past. You know, connected a lot with our past players, and trying to involve them in some way in our team, so our players get a sense of, what it means to some past players, what it means for our players to represent the current team. So we that was, I guess, one way we kind of kept it fresh. We not only players, we looked at some past individual Firebirds teams that have had some success. Mm-hmm. Used a lot of different voices. So traditionally, in a head coach in any sport, they're the person that does all the talking. So I'm not like that. I don't want to be talking the whole time because it's actually not healthy. So put a lot of guys on the spot and got them to lead a team talk, got them to lead a debrief, got them to do a joke of the day. And we're also lucky we've got a very enthusiastic strength and conditioning coach, Andrew Smith, who brings a huge amount of energy to every warm-up. So we're lucky we've kind of got that. So it's just trying to be innovative and just trying to, it's not so much thinking on your feet. It comes back to that planning phase. It's, we spoke in the winter as a management, how are we going to keep this, how are we going to keep these guys interested? Because I saw it as an assistant every single year. The last 2 or 3 games, our performance just goes down. It's not that guys don't care. It's just that it's just same shit, different day type philosophy. So how can we make this fun? How can we make this interesting? And how can we keep, the intensity, to use the word, the intensity and that fizz of playing a game of cricket still there?
As I think, look, I've played under a few coaches that were narrow in terms of what they, in terms of their confidence. And I say that, and I've spoken about this on a few other of these chats, that a couple of the coaches would have no outside influences. So there'd be no outside bowler come in to talk to the team or to maybe spend some time with a couple of players. There'd be no batsman from outside, former, current, whatever, come in and talk to the team. I get the impression that you're very welcoming of those kind of influences as opposed to standoffish about that.
Oh, absolutely. And just hearing you talk that's the ego of the coach.
Yes, sir.
Like you get the ego of the player, that's the ego of the coach. I don't want somebody helping this player because he might get the credit for it. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat for the same reason. And if this guy wants to help this player and he's got a skill set that I don't, then be silly not to use it because it's going to make this player better. To answer your question, you pretty much answered it for me. I'm more than open to get those guys in to help in ways that I can't do. And we use the likes of Grant Elliott, who retired 3 or 4 years ago. He's on the board now at Cricket Wellington, but he helps out from time to time. Ronks helps out from time to time. These guys are still in and around Wellington. Obviously, Luke Woodcock now is on the payroll for Cricket Wellington, but even before then, he was still, in and around the team just because he loves Wellington and loves cricket. So it's about getting not as many people, but getting the right people in and the right people aligned to people to help them. Because cricket's such a huge game and there's so many different variants in it. You need to, not one person's going to know every single thing about the game of cricket.
How do you got this all going on underneath you in terms of planning, preparation? You're the coach, you're in front, you're the man running the show. How do you then deal with life away from cricket? How do you get your exits, your release, your pressure valve? How do you disappear when it isn't going so good? You've had a couple of good seasons in terms of the last couple of seasons, so you haven't necessarily had those big lows, but how do you get your fix when cricket isn't doing it for you?
At the moment, I'm really lucky because you've got a young family.
Yeah.
And when I say lucky, I truly am lucky because if I didn't have that, I don't know if I'd be able to answer your question. At the moment I come home, we lose a game of cricket, I come home, my 3-year-old son got no idea.
Yeah.
So he's smiling and hugging dad and wants me to read him a story, and you can't replace that. So I'm really lucky. I look at again. I've said this on other chats that I look at
Ross Taylor's career, pre-kids, post-kids, and I look at how he's scoring, and to an extent pre-surgery on his eye and post-surgery on his eye, but both. And I just look at and I still speak to Ross, and he's amazingly just connected with his family and connected with the team, and he speaks so highly of this group of guys. He just says it's nice to go home and just be a dad and just be a husband. And I think that escape is keeps you sane, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Otherwise, your head just, you just go nowhere. And even during this lockdown, I'm lucky I've got a 3-year-old that just wants to play all the time.
Oh,
I'm here and locked in the bedroom now. Literally, the door's locked so he can't get in. But when I go out there, he's going to want to go on his balance bike. We're going to go around the block, and it's whatever's happened in this interview.
He's scratching at the door like a pet, is he? He's not sort of...
Not yet. Yeah, that'll be next. Yeah. But it's you can't replace that. Whereas you leave, you go into you go back into your own little bubble in your own head, and that's where you can get yourself into trouble.
You wanted to be here 10 years ago.
Yeah.
7 years ago, sorry. You wanted to be here 7 years ago. That is just that's a statement, not a question, but answer the statement if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it's a lot of people ask me why I wanted to be a cricket coach as well, and why I wanted to be, a first-class coach. And
yeah,
I actually can't really answer it. It's actually a really hard thing to. If I look back when I first had that meeting with Mark, and then had a couple of years of under 15 coaching under my belt, I think back then, I know back then it was probably all about me. It was like, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this so I feel good about myself. I'm good. We're winning games of cricket. Shit, I'm a good guy. I'm a nice guy. I'm successful. Now, and again, it's the benefit of hindsight. Now, I'm not looking at it from that philosophy. I'm looking at it that I'm actually helping other people's dreams now. I'm actually making an impact on a guy making his debut for the Black Caps, or a guy, dominating a campaign for Wellington. I'm in a unique position where I can see other guys' dreams happen in front of me. So,
what sort of hit? It's a bad word because it relates to drugs. What sort of boost do you get from seeing one of your guys go on and do well for New Zealand? Because
it's probably the best boost.
More and more as well.
Yeah, it would be it's the best boost, because these guys, as you know, as a past professional cricketer, how hard they work and the ups and downs they go through. So to see them come out on the other side, and not all of them are going to come out on the other side, to see them come out on that other side, and not only one gets selected, but also enjoy that experience. Because not everyone does enjoy that experience. Come out and go, I love that, and I want more of that. It is a bit like a drug. It's an adrenaline drug. It's like, shit, I want a bit more of this. I want to keep going.
So you're hooked now. You're a junkie on the fact that bringing Wellington players success and then turning them into Black Caps. You're a junkie now, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I get more satisfaction out of that than winning competitions. Winning competitions is great. Don't get me wrong. That was a hell of a feeling.
Well, that keeps you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. But seeing that other part, seeing that other aspect, that's massive for me, because you're not always going to win as well. Another question that people ask is that we have had some success, and what do you put it down to? And it can't answer it. Sometimes you just get lucky. We used 21 players in this Plunket Shield campaign in 6 games, and you take out Devon Conway scoring 700 runs. We didn't have anyone dominate the competition. We only got 200s in the 6 games. No one got above 15 wickets. I think. So we did.
You had 21 players play in 6 games.
Yeah,
that's absurd. It
is absurd. Yeah.
How do you justify it?
Well, exactly.
That's not a challenge. But how do you justify that?
Yeah, well, it goes against everything we've probably spoken about as a group before. It's we want consistency of selection. You want guys to understand their roles. So to understand your roles, you've got to play cricket and play in that role all the time. You obviously want rhythm, both batting and bowling perspective. So it goes against everything like that. But, the reason it was 21 players is one of the games we had 3 guys ruled out within 24 hours of the game. So we had to bring in 3 new players. It's like, that's pressure. That is pressure for those guys coming in and for the group, how they handle that. We had Bennett called up to the Black Caps, so that means another player comes in. We've got Neesham and Blundell in and out of the team because they were in and out of the Black Caps. We had some injuries at the back end of the season, so guys come in for one-off games. So that's having those guys underneath ready, not so much from a physical perspective, because I think they always will be, but ready from a mental perspective. That obviously worked for us because they came in and they did a job, which is all that was required.
Okay, all right. This leads me to this turns into the challenge now. There's a freedom of debuting, or there's a freedom of coming into a team because you're like, all of a sudden you're playing first class cricket and you're getting a chance, you get an opportunity. Sometimes that is freedom, and sometimes that restricts you as a player. Now, 21 players in 6 games that's a ridiculous number. Next season, you're going to use 15 players. How do you keep that fresh for those 15 players, given that this season you didn't have to keep anything fresh because there was 21 different players?
Haven't crossed that bridge yet, mate, but that's, I'll
just
just write that down.
No. But this is where my mind goes, going back to playing 4-day campaigns and playing a couple of seasons over here. They're long seasons sometimes. How do you then turn that, take nervous energy, which is great, and then when people get comfortable, then turn that into success? Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I do. No, that's a really good question. I think that's where you've really got to think on your feet as a coach, because that's the ultimate goal, is to have that freshness there. So you're thinking on your feet and understanding what the group needs.
Yeah.
So you can sense, maybe not everyone can, but you can sense at times, what does the group need here? Do they need a hard word? Do they need a real soft chat? Do we need to have a blowout and go to the races? And, having an understanding of what the group needs and then devising a plan as quick as you can. It's no different to a player having to adapt to different conditions. You gave the example of the spin. As players adapt, we've got to adapt our coaching style in some respects as to what we see in front of us and what we feel the group needs.
I went to there was a sort of a day's chat. So Ian McGeechan, former Lions coach, head coach, manager, whatever they call that role that role, and he was talking about on a Lions tour, they would be either emailed or text if they were playing or not playing. You've got 21 players in 6 games. How do you get around the team? Phone calls, face-to-faces, to say, sorry, you're not playing the next game. You are playing the next game. The highs and the lows of explaining the yay and nay. Because that emotionally is, I've done that a couple of times with some indoor cricket stuff. That's hard work.
Oh, it is hard because you're breaking guys' dreams as well. You're shattering them in some respects, and you get close to these players and you see them every day. So it's about how you do it.
Every drop is a chance to end a career.
Yeah, absolutely. Given the way the contract system is as it is, even now these guys don't know if they've got a job in September because we've got to do a whole new contract list again. So that's comes with a whole lot of different challenges. But to answer your question, in the first instance, try and always have that conversation face to face with the player. Because that just shows that you care and you actually want to take some time out of your day to sit with them and tell them. It's not always achievable because of the challenges of travel and you're not even in the city and the guys left early or whatever it may be. So if that can't happen, it's having that conversation over the phone. But look, there's no easy way to do it. There's no easy way to say it.
What's have you ever? Okay, so I got my so when I got told I was going to first be in a New Zealand squad, the coach handed me the phone. So he had been
Yeah.
rung. His phone was always going off. It was ridiculous. He handed me the phone, and I said, "Ian speaking." I didn't know who it was. I didn't have a clue who was at the other end of the phone and what it meant. There was a series upcoming against Australia, and hi, one of the New Zealand selectors here, Brian McKechnie. You've been, and that just freaked me out in terms of hearing that news. How is it? Have you had to pass the phone on to somebody? Have you found out before the players, before they've got a call up to the New Zealand team? How is that process working now? Do you know, or the player knows? Who gets phone call first?
Generally, it's around about the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, they generally the player knows first, and then as soon as the player knows, then we kind of know. So it's a real juggling act. But you know, New Zealand cricket are bloody good at that at the moment, and I haven't had much experience with them in the past dealing with that. But you know, the communication around, I guess, who's in and who's not, and the reasons why is quite fluid, which is really good, especially from the players who aren't in, because we want our players that are performing in, and if they're not in, we actually want to be given honest feedback as to what they need to do to get in, because then we can help that player, give them that opportunity to do that. So, you know, that feedback's really good.
Do you get so you as a coach, if someone is left out, for example, do you then seek that feedback? Do you then go, what do they need to do?
Yeah, occasionally. Like, I guess the best example I can give them.
That's really hard as a player. If you've just been left out, you're not, thanks very much, catch you later. That's really a emotional question on that phone call, on that chat, to find out. So, yeah, you take that one?
Oh, yeah, it depends on the situation as well, because sometimes they may not always get told straight away. And I'll ask that of the player. I'll say, you know, did you get any feedback as to what you need to do to improve? And they may say no. And if they say no, I'll say, well, would you like me to follow up? And they may say no again, or they may say, yeah, I'd like that. So it's an individual case-by-case scenario. But the comms has to be so, you have to be so aligned, because if you're disaligned with it, it's actually going to disadvantage that player. So the best one I can think of is someone like Tom Blunder, who's an opening batter for the Black Caps in the moment. Well, he's also the second best keeper in New Zealand, and he's also kicked and batted 5 or below his whole first-class cricket career for New Zealand. For Wellington. So, you know, if New Zealand are on one page and Wellington are on a different page for that player, he's the one that's going to miss out. So we need to have those conversations, I guess, as an association and as New Zealand cricket, and then we need to get the player involved in that as well, because if they see him in a particular spot and we're not going to help facilitate that, then it's tough. We don't want to be in that position.
I played one dayer, smashed around the park, bowled 6 overs for plenty. If I'd gone for one more run, we would have lost, but we tied. I played that one game and then didn't play a one-day international for a long time. It took me a long time to ask what I needed to do to get back into that team. So given Tom Blundell's situation, do you have to play him as an opener now? How do you change that for him? Because they asked me you're not going to open the bowling in the one-day cricket. You're going to be bowling first change if you play one-day cricket, which suited me because I couldn't swing a white ball, had no idea how to do it. So they asked me to bowl first change, and I could then take that back to Wellington, and that could be accommodated, or it couldn't be. How do you then take Tom and create Tom Blundell, take him and create him make him a better player? Do you go, no, I think he's a number 5, or do you have to push him into opening?
Like at the end of the day, we can bat him wherever we want.
Yeah.
You know, we can bat him where we want, but as I said before, and I haven't had this conversation with New Zealand cricket because we didn't need to in the end. Tom was going to be coming back for the last round, which never happened. So Before that happened, I was going to need to have that conversation, and I'll have that in some stage in the winter. But there's so many complexities to it. There's, I guess, his current position as an opener in the Black Caps and doing really well. There's BJ Watling.
Yep.
Is he still playing? How long is he playing for? And there may not be an answer to these things. If he's not playing, if he gets injured, who bats 6 and who keeps? There's all those questions and answers that need to be probably thrown on the table before a decision gets put as to what is best for Tom Blundell in his career.
But trying to accommodate that in a first class team and in a white ball 50 over 20 over game, trying to accommodate that at the level below can really make a mess of your team. Given that you've probably got two, in most scenarios you've got 2 openers that play most of the season. You've got 3 openers that play most of the season, let's say, and now you've got to try and make a 4th. Yeah. That's
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And that's, as I said, that's where all those scenarios, all those things need to get chucked on the table, and then we need to make a decision at the end of it. It's like, well, we're going to go this way because of X, Y, Z, or we're going to go this way, and then that needs to be spoken with Tom as well.
Yeah.
But he, we don't want to include him with all that information because he just wants to play cricket.
Yeah.
He just wants to score runs. So.
One of the real big shift here. One of the reasons why I wanted to do some of these chats in and around cricket, I thought I'd start with cricket because that's an easy place to be. Cricket players, media, and then I'd sort of break out of it. One of the impetuses was you got in contact with me earlier, probably late last year actually. It's probably fair, isn't it? Yeah, probably late last year. and you asked me to write a letter to the Wellington team, given what you would tell them, what you would say to them. That was pretty much the brief, wasn't it? What was the brief?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much that. Yeah, it was a very brief to give you the scope to interpret it and say what you wanted to say, basically.
And admittedly, when that email come through, it was a bit of a tough time for me in terms of my mental health. But and it took me a long time to get back to you. And firstly, I apologize. And secondly, I'm glad it did take me a long time because I enjoyed what I wrote, and I probably wrote a ridiculous amount of words. But that you went and asked former players to write a letter almost as if to themselves, given to their previous playing selves. Where'd that come from?
It probably came back to, again, wanting the group to have an understanding of the past and who they're representing. And that's not just the teams, that's the players, that's coaches, that's staff members. So it was more around just having a deeper connection, because you can get just so caught up in your own little world. I want to go out, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that, and that's all well and good. There's certainly a place for that, but at the end of the day, these guys are representing 666 playing caps of first class cricket for Wellington, which, a lot of those people are still connected in the game in some respect and follow the game in some respect, and had an experience, whether it be positive or negative, had an experience with the Firebirds. So it was important, I felt, for this group to have an understanding of what those guys went through and how it affected them. It just created a little bit of a deeper meaning.
The end of that result is that you actually so that invitation to me has actually made me want to turn these sort of conversations, these longer format conversations, because basically what I wrote was about this length and reading out. I heard you edited it down. Well, fair enough too. But it created, for me, this real change, that going back to talking about coaching before and thinking, I could be a bowling coach, or I could be a assistant coach, but I didn't think I could be a head coach. That letter writing to those guys sort of confirmed to me that I crossed that bridge in going, actually, I have a philosophy now. I have a feeling now of how a team can exist and can fulfill each other's requirements, fulfill each other's needs. What is that feeling, philosophy, emotion around the team like? What kind of a group have you got in Wellington at the moment?
Yeah,
Do you get without? That's quite an emotional question, if that makes sense. But I gave away a lot in that letter in terms of my feelings, my emotions at the time. There was and a lot of it is, it's not regret, but it's, I wish I could have done things better. I wish I could have been a better person, etc. How do you allow that into your circle? One, but then how do you embrace the rest of the guys? Because it's a heavily emotional and mental taxing game.
Oh, it is, yeah. But emotions are very natural, and you need to discuss them. And not everybody is going to be open enough to discuss them. So, one, you've got to have a trusting environment where people feel comfortable to do it. And how you get to that place it's not a simple answer. It takes time, and it comes down to your leaders. Effectively, it comes down to your management and your senior players and how they set up the environment and how they structure the environment. If you get the captain standing up talking about something he's failed at or something he's struggled at with, then that makes it a very comfortable environment for the guy who's only played 3 games to stand up and say how he's feeling. And it's not saying he's got a negative emotion. He may have a positive emotion, but it's how you set that up as a coach and as leaders to create the environment. And we do talk about emotions a lot, both positive and negative, because it's just one way to get it off your chest. And once you get that out in the open, you feel so much better for doing that. And all people want to do is, in some respects, all people want to do is be heard. So it's common courtesy and respect just to let somebody say what they want to say and listen, and then you move on.
Do you think it's easier? And I already know the answer to this question, but I'm kind of going to force it. Do you think it's easier knowing, having not played, to be more available emotionally to your players? And I say that given that, and I say that with no disrespect, I say that with, you don't know what they're going through, so it's a lot easier for you to ask those questions. Do you see where I'm going with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I don't know what they're going from a playing perspective, but the comparison that I can draw is I guess going through a dream and having that dream and not achieving that dream, and then going back down to the bottom of the pile and go, okay, I've hit rock bottom here. I've still got that in mind. What's the next step I've got to do? What's the next thing I've got to do? I've wanted to achieve this plan in 10 years. I've got nowhere near it. What do? Do I give up? Or do I have another crack? So I've got that where, yes, it's not a playing comparison, but it's an experience where it's relatable to what some of these players are going through as well.
It's pretty hard because you've got people's careers and livelihoods in your hand, and that's a heavily that's a heavy burden. Yeah. Those conversations saying, we're not going to play you, we are going to play you, you've just been called up, you've just been dropped. You go home and sleep.
Try to,
yeah. No, I find all that side of it, I find all that side of it phenomenal. It's and I think coming from outside cricket, I think that gives you a big advantage actually compared to coming from inside cricket and taking over, because it's an inquisitiveness actually, and you can almost plead ignorance with the wrong question. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can use ignorance as a way of breaking down a barrier that a former player may be not able to do. Yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. I'll just talk to myself for a little bit here. So what's life like in New Zealand at the moment, man? It's a sunny day outside, sunny Sunday morning, off to fly a kite. What do you have to do?
It's not a bad option. It's about 50k winds out there, mate. So
Whatever.
So just another day. But no, mate, it's quiet. At this stage of the year, this is all I'd be doing anyway. Given it was the off season, I'd be having a month off with the family. Would have been gone to the Gold Coast or something, which we're obviously not doing. So the only difference here is we just don't have a beach, and we're pretty much homebound. But really valuing that time I can spend with the family, which is irreplaceable. Really, we just hopefully things starting to come to a bit of an end in New Zealand. There's been the number of cases is less and less, and government are looking to make an announcement tomorrow as to whether we go drop down a level or not. So New Zealand public are really getting behind it, which is great.
What's the logo on your hat, Pockets? What's that?
This is Fortune Favours, which is a beer brand actually. They're a local brewery in Wellington, which are part of a sponsor of Cricket Wellington too. So they official supply of Cricket Wellington throughout the summer of beer. Not too much of it though.
Unpaid plug, and I'm not sure I'm allowed to put that anyway. I'll have to work that one out later when I edit this. I thought it looked like a softball team or some sort of rugby team or something or other, but nice one.
No, I think they've gone for that design, but you're right. It's just I haven't worn it to give it a plug either.
It's nice.
I like it.
I spoke to Peter McGlashan about a month ago now. He had a cap on it, and it was the New Zealand baseball cap, and I loved it. And so I've actually ordered one because it was damn good looking cap. How long can you do this for? How long can you stay a head coach? Forever?
Yeah, I don't know about it. It's hard. It's it's that same emotional roller coaster that a player goes through. Day in, day out, you're challenged. I'll keep doing it for as long as I enjoy it. I do love that challenge of every day brings something slightly different, and you've got to be quick on your feet to adapt. I like that challenging part of the role. So as long as I'm enjoying it and having some success, then I'll continue the role as long as I can, really. And I did certainly got ambitions to go higher as well within New Zealand.
Cool.
Take over from Gary Stead or somebody at that next level one day. So I guess that's the future vision for me, which I've had to reset given I got to this role after 17 years of planning. I've got to reset my plan. It's going to be an 18-year plan now.
Mate, awesome. Hey, again, you sending me that email and asking for me to write a letter, again, I emphasize that that's part of the reason why I'm sort of doing these things, is that there's a reconnection. There's let's find out. That was an opportunity for me to talk about the bits that I got wrong that led to the bits that were awesome, were amazing, were pure, if you like. We're just a part of it. So appreciate you reaching out for that letter. And then, man, I appreciate your honesty here. That's an awesome chat. It was worth staying up late on a Saturday night for it, isolated in a that was well worth it, man. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. I just had one question, mate. Did you manage to finish that bottle of red wine, or we're still on that same glass?
The glass is done. The glass was done a wee while ago.
Well done.
I think I've got a glass left in the bottle, and it's, what is it now, 10 to midnight. I've got a little bit more of a movie to watch, so might get the bottle finished. 2 more nights in isolation, and then I can hug the kids. So
oh wow.
Yeah, we're on full countdown. My man, Glenn, thank you so much for your time. Go and let your 3-year-old in the door, scratching at the door, be scratched through soon. And enjoy the rest of the winter that's coming up. Thank you so much.
Will do. Thanks, buddy. And yeah, we'll chat later.
Cool, man. Thanks. Hi, Ian O'Brien here. Thanks for getting to the end of this 108 with IOB. I'd appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe, please. But also leave us a message down below in the comments about what was your most interesting or favourite part of this chat. Thanks a lot. Love ya.